Welcome, journeyers, for another trip through New York City religions on a journey through NYC Religions Television. On April 14th, a couple of years ago, before the pandemic, we did our first program, and it was a humdinger. It was so interesting. We had the chief religion correspondent for Fox News Network, Lauren Green, with us to talk about faith in her life. In her first book, Lighthouse Faith. Now we've come back again with her, and we're so eager. She's got another humdinger of a book, a year-long devotional that's called
Light for Today.
Welcome to the program.
You planned that, didn't you?
I like that.
Just to see if I remembered.
Yeah, see if you remember. Well, I should try a different title. The light, it's coming eventually. Or after 10 years, I finally, it only took me 2 years to get the light. Isn't that right?
I don't know.
You said one time that you took 10 years to finally get that book together.
It took 10 years of research, of reading, and of course I wasn't on it all the time. But I mean, it was a lot of.
I'm just sort of pulling it.
It was a lot of years working on it.
I'm just pulling it late.
Okay. All right. Good. All right.
Yeah. That won't be what's on broadcast, Brian. But what we do have is that I remember I looked up, and of course immediately I looked up in your book about what did you say about April 14th?
What did I say?
Well, you said we have to be thankful for the small gifts.
Yes.
Now, we were gifted. Let me tell you, we had gotten to the studio and our planned program fell apart. Our first broadcast. So we called Brian's good friend, Lauren Green, and said, help, help. And she came out, amazingly enough, she came out to help us, and that program has really did move a lot of people. And in fact, moved us that when her new book has come out, will be coming out in February or March of 2024. We thought, well, we've got to take a look at it and have her back on the program. Now, I've taken a look at it, and I did look at April 14th, and I've looked at several other sections of it, and I think that this is a book that you're going to want to get. How did you start this book?
Well, after the Lighthouse Faith came out, you do so much research for a book like that because it's part theological, part scientific, part musical, of course. I felt that I needed to do a daily kind of thought for my relationship with God as it was growing. And so I started doing these thoughts for the day for myself.
Just
well, based on the devotionals I was reading and all the scriptures I was reading for every day. I mean, I read the Bible every day and I read devotionals every day.
Well, let me set the stage. When do you typically get up to do your devotional? Do you do it in the morning?
In the mornings. In the mornings. Usually it's very early in the morning.
Before the cats get fed?
Well, usually the cats get first dibs of my time. You know, have to say, God have mercy on me, and then let's go do the cats.
You know, the cats were gods back in ancient Egypt.
And they still think they are, actually.
Yes, that's true.
Yes, because I've got 7 of them that actually think they're, several levels of divinity. But yes, so I mean, I basically, do the cats in the morning, and then take care of the cats in the morning with the, various things, and then come back and do and read the devotionals.
And you started writing them down, is that?
I started writing them down. I actually read other people's devotionals. I have 4 devotionals that I actually read every day of other people, and then read the Bible every day. It's a daily Bible reading so that you read the Bible in 1 year continually, and I've done that for several years now, at least a decade. So and then those, as thoughts would come to me through those readings, I would write them down, and that's how the thoughts for the day started after the Lighthouse Faith book came out. And then instead of just me reading them or writing them for myself, they were posted on Facebook. And then I ended up having over like 450 of them. So about a year and a half ago, a publisher approached me and said, "Would you like to do a devotional?" I said, "By the way, I actually have devotions already
It was a
written."
brilliant idea, and this book is really going to be successful.
Well, I hope so, but what I hope...
We got to get the word out. But
I hope that people understand that the reason why this book is special to me, probably even more special than Lighthouse Faith, is because it was personal. Now, when I wrote the thoughts for the day, it was me that I was writing about. The devotional, as I re-edited them, they're more generic. So it's not just me telling about me. But like you keyed in on it and you thought, oh, that happened to you. Yes, a lot of things did happen to me. Or they happened to a friend, or they happened to my husband, or, you know, but it's generic.
Well, I noticed that one thing you refer back to in both books, but in the devotional, you often come back to childhood events. Somebody's events, you don't
Right.
identify who it is. But I noticed that on January 4th, trauma transformed to treasure. Now, this is a childhood story. And yet, it is a poignant, almost lightly painful story of a child that has a hard time.
Well, I think that every one of us has a childhood trauma that maybe to an adult doesn't seem as bad as it was to the child, but children react differently. But this particular one did happen to me, and it was something that I remembered years later, because it was something that should never happen to any child. But it did happen. But it was the triumph in this trauma was that I learned how to forgive. And as an adult, I realized even though it happened when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, I still had to forgive, because otherwise I would carry that resentment and hatred and anger around for so long. I mean, unforgiveness is really a cancer on your soul.
Well, now I started with the trauma, which was in January, but now you referred to in April. You pick up this trauma about having a pen pal.
Oh, yes.
Now, tell what happened to this kid.
I mean, you're really delving into it, because I meant not to show people my personal life in these devotionals. But you're right. I mean, this was a personal thing that happened when I was probably 8 or 9. We had pen pals in school, and I lived in a fairly inner city school. Although Minneapolis inner city was hardly many. I mean, they had a lot of kids who I think in my class of maybe 30 students, probably about a third of them were African American. And that's it. I mean, that's totally different today. You sometimes have an entire class of African American, but
right.
About a third. So we had a pen pal.
South of Minneapolis.
South Minneapolis pen pals with some other school in a white area of Minneapolis. I think it was southwest Minneapolis, very close to Edina. And I was writing back and forth with her, and we had a nice pen pal relationship. And then she invited me to come to her school's carnival. And so my mother dressed me in a freshly pressed sundress, and we went to this carnival, and they dropped me off, and I think their family drove us back, but we were there, and I just met her for the first time. We walked around the carnival, and we were having fun, except for 2 boys kept following us around and kept calling me these racial slurs. I mean, every racial slur you can imagine.
Oh, you're kidding. How old were you?
I was probably about 8 or 9.
Oh my gosh.
And they were calling me. I mean, we'd go wherever we went, that's what they followed, and they called us all these names. And my friend never said anything. I never said anything. It was like I just wanted them to go away. And they dropped me off. I don't think I ever even cried about it. It was like I just felt like it was my fault somehow. But then I never told my parents, Probably decades later I might have told my mom, but even then I think they would have been very upset.
Did you want to, because you wanted to be accepted, not make a big
no,
fuss
it wasn't.
out of it?
I didn't want there to be trouble. I just wanted them to go away. And the pen pal, she wrote to me again, because I didn't know if anybody else heard it but me, because nobody else reacted. My pen pal wrote to me later, and she said, I would love you to come to someone or whatever. Nobody will call you any names. And so I knew that she had heard them the way I heard them. So I guess it really did happen the way that it was. But I never responded to her. And I realized later that I'd had to forgive these boys. You know?
And you didn't respond to her. Were you blaming her somehow?
Nope, didn't blame her. I didn't know who
Trying
to blame.
to put it behind
I
you.
think it's like I'm 9 years old. How do I process this without an adult? But then I thought later, it's like, but no adult came to my aid. No adult either. Maybe an adult did stop them later, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
But no one. I think. I mean, think about it. I'm probably within 2 miles of my home because this is how neighborhoods in Minneapolis work. And in this neighborhood, there are no black children. There are no black people at all. So I was probably the only person of color in this carnival, and these 2 boys were just, I was the victim that day.
And how? And later you came to see that Jesus is a forgiving.
Absolutely. This is how
But-
I learned,
when did you
understood
get
the
that
forgiveness.
reasoning?
Well, that came much later. I understood forgiveness as an adult, and I realized as an adult, I still had to forgive those boys. Because, like I said, unforgiveness is cancer on your soul. If you don't forgive, you will perpetuate whatever anger and hurt and pain that someone inflicted on you.
So what did you just said to God, says, okay, I forgive them?
I
How did
forgive
it
them
happen?
because if God can forgive me of all of the things that I have done to offend God, I can forgive those boys.
When you said that,
Oh,
did
totally.
you
Absolutely.
feel something?
Absolutely.
Really?
There's a total forgiveness. There's a release. For some reason, we hang on to unforgiveness like it's a blanket, like it's our security blanket. No, I have to treat these people this way. But there is a pain debt that God has already paid. And when you don't forgive, you're saying you know more than God.
So in fact, you're sort of saying that the lack of forgiveness means that it actually ends up being your burden.
Yes.
It ends up being dragging you down.
It does more harm to you than it does to the person that you won't forgive.
But after you forgave, maybe you didn't realize that until after you forgave and you felt this, like, wow, I feel really a lot better.
I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
it doesn't hurt me. It doesn't hurt me anymore because I know that Jesus died for them as well as he died for me.
Now you have, from the very beginning of the devotional to the end, you talk a lot about children. In fact, from January 1st,
I didn't realize I talked about children that much. I actually thought I talked about adults more.
You said that January 1st has said that you need to think of the whole year as a shot of light directly from the baby Jesus.
Well, I think that understanding that you must understand that Christmas is not just December 25th, right? Christmas goes through, in terms of the liturgical calendar, through the 12th night, which is January 5th, I believe. So traditionally, that is the time that wise men actually get to Bethlehem. Now, scholars will tell you that they didn't get there until he was 2 years old and toddler. I mean, I don't know. All I know is that from the liturgical year, the 12th night is January 5th. So
Well, let me ask you, I'm curious. Some people, toward the end of the year or at the beginning of the year, they look back and count, what were the triumphs, what were the things they correct, and, what they're thankful for. Do you do that once a year?
No.
No.
No. I think every day is a gift. Every single day is a gift that we need to acknowledge that there's certain things that are going to happen today that I may not be prepared for or I have planned, but ultimately God is in charge. Looking back on a year is fine, and I think it's traditionally that people do that on January 1st. I don't make New Year's resolutions, except to continue growing in Christ and growing in my relationship with God. That's the only resolution I would make. I do think one of the funniest things I've done in the devotional is because I have a one-year Bible and I talk about that around, I'm not quite sure when it is, if it's March or February, whatever. It's the time where the one-year Bible gets to Leviticus. And I said, and this is the graveyard of good intentions for people who want to read the Bible all the way through. It's Leviticus. It's like they start in Genesis and all those great stories, and you move to Exodus, and then, oh my gosh, Leviticus.
So do you go through the Leviticus every year?
Oh yes.
Now,
Because now I understood what was it about. I mean, once you understand the book of Leviticus and do the study Bibles and you understand what they're actually talking about, it's a lot more fun to read Leviticus.
well, I think people probably don't know, though they'll see it in your books. You actually do a lot of biblical scholarship. That is, you really read in depth. You read in theology. You know the councils of the church and what they. I mean, we just had before the program with one of our staff a discussion about the Council of Nicaea. And I said, well, I don't, and I'm listening to you, and I'm saying, well, now I'm understanding it. For the audience, what is the Council of Nicaea?
Well, the Council of Nicaea is one of the several councils that, but out of the Council of Nicaea comes the understanding the divinity of Christ, because you understand that when after the resurrection, you've got this ragtag group of apostles and followers, and the church is being persecuted. And who was this Jesus? And was he crucified? Paul is writing to the Corinthians and said, 500 people saw him resurrected, saw his resurrected body. I mean, this is trying to understand what the theology, what the doctrine of Christ is, of Jesus Christ. Is he divine or is he just human? And so, like I was explaining to you before, you've got this idea, because science now helps us understand the dual divinity, the dual nature of Christ. You know, the light, the duality of light particles versus the wave. Well, here we've got Jesus, who was called the light of the world, and now he's fully human and fully divine. So now science helps us wrap our brain around this concept of Jesus as light, because of the duality.
Now, audience,
And
you're thinking, okay, this devotional is about quantum physics, and how are we going to... No, it's not. But I just wanted to show this, that the background, the depth of the writer, I mean, we see her on television. She does stories that are really wonderful to watch, but there's so much more depth, and that depth comes out in her devotionals in a personal way. You know, you're always very tangible too. You like, out of the cradle comes the child. You know, and then you talk about how the walls. One day, on July 5th, building walls, and you said there are many kinds of walls. And now listen to this: brick, stone, wooden, or even walls made like straw, like in the children's story of the 3 little piggies. I mean, you really like the tactile and the earthy side of reality.
But that's where we are. We're in the trenches of the world.
Yeah.
We live in the trenches, and to see everything as being part of God's creation is really very helpful. You know, one of the things I was thinking about the other day is that we talk about, you know, God turning water into wine, right? Mm-hmm. That is Jesus' first miracle, the wedding at Cana. He turns water into wine. And I remember C.S. Lewis saying, God turns water into wine all the time. It's called rain.
Yes.
And he waters the ground, and grapes grow, and then we stamp on them, and it becomes wine. It's just that kind of wine he lets us participate in.
Well, I stand justified. We only gave her water for drink. And now I know that it's godly. It's a spiritual moment that will eventually become wine, but not on our budget.
Not on your budget. And it won't be very quickly, but I think that you just, in terms of thinking, understanding it, that people always ask me, like, why doesn't God do, like, the parting of the Red Sea? What does he do the big miracles that, you know, I can believe in him? And, you know, my response is, well, first of all, even if God came to you and showed you a miracle beyond a miracle, like some person's hand, you know, was chopped off and he just sort of, and it's really, really attached, right, you wouldn't believe. Now, because because that's the level of sin that's in us.
Now, there's another day that you go back to the tangible. I call it the day of the forgotten room, because you say here, it's called spiritual amnesia for May 2nd.
Ooh.
By this gospel you are saved, if you hold firmly to the word I preached to you, otherwise you have believed in vain, from 1 Corinthians. And I'd really like the image you used. Did you ever walk into a room because you forgot something, only to forget what you forgot when you got to the room?
People of a certain age know what that is, because you don't think that happens, and when you're younger, you think, why are old people like this? But it doesn't take very
Well,
long.
what's the spiritual lesson here?
The spiritual lesson is that we can read a scripture and understand what it says, and then walk away from it and never remember it at all.
Yes.
You know, it's like you walk into a room. I know this thing was so important I had to get, and then I walk into the room and I go, I've forgotten what I wanted to get, and then you walk out. And I think that's very much like our spirituality, that we will pray, we will even memorize the scripture. But one of the things that, you know, God calls us to do is not just to have his laws on as an external force, but as an internal motivation.
You know, I'm going to go from walls and rooms now to towers.
Towers.
September 11th.
Oh, September 11th.
You write about September 11th. You have a devotional for it. He deal with a captain who was slated to go on the pilot, one of the planes, and he didn't go because I guess he, you know, didn't go on duty that day. But he always realized that he could have been into that. I think it was American Airlines Flight 11 that day. He had been assigned to be a co-pilot. But at that last moment, a more senior pilot bumped him.
These are moments in time where very few of us get these moments to understand that life could have been different, life could have ended. Very few of us have these revelations. This is a tale of two cities kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Only the person who bumped him obviously didn't know that he was sacrificing his life. But the person whose life, the pilot whose life has changed, it is the idea that nothing happens out of God's knowledge. And so the question is, why am I here? And why do I get this opportunity to live, and the pilot who bumped me did not?
And he asked that question, and he did something about it.
I mean, putting something, you can't waste your life when you've got that opportunity. Mm-hmm. Life changes at that point. It's not going to be the same anymore. And if it is, you don't have a heart.
You say now this man, did you meet this guy?
No, I did not. No,
but you say now this man lives with a sense of urgency to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yes, because life is so fragile. It is incredibly fragile, and we are here not to make money, although making money is okay. Mm-hmm. But we were not here to be the top of our career, although that's okay as well.
Have you had moments where you felt you realized your life was fragile?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things that has been a challenge for me, and I do believe there are spiritual forces of evil in the world, and I do believe that those spiritual forces attack people who have made a decision for Christ and really are called according to his purpose. And I think those are people that are targeted more than anybody else. From the people that I've met, and when you try to live this godly life, that is when the Spirit kind of attacks you. The devil doesn't care if you don't acknowledge God, because he knows he's got you. But when you've actually acknowledged and want to live according to God's precepts, and you see God as who he is, that's when the spiritual forces of evil come to you.
Do you think our age is more intense than previous ages in that regard? Because, I mean, some people would say, well, Tim Keller had it easy as a pastor here in New York City.
Tim Keller had it easy?
Well, there is a book coming out that says he had it easy because, he was a nice guy. He believed in a graceful manner for reaching out to people. Mm-hmm. But now we're in a negative age where everybody wants to attack you. And so he couldn't survive in the negative age.
You know, he came along, he started Redeemer at a time when Redeemer was, when the city of New York was at almost its bottom in the 1980s. And nobody thought that they would be able to start a church in a place like New York City.
Yeah, that was a big, big surprise. Now, you know, one thing that oh, here's another building, another earthy thing, a firm foundation on June 30th.
It's my birthday.
Ah, so on your birthday, you were thinking about having a firm foundation?
A firm foundation, you know, all buildings have to have a firm foundation. All buildings, anything that's created has to have a firm foundation.
How do you celebrate your birthday, generally speaking? You do a devotional even on your birthday?
Oh, absolutely. I read the devotions on my birthday. I especially read the Bible on my birthday.
Just got to give you some ice cream afterwards?
Well, I'm more, I don't know. It depends. We road trips. Last year we went to the Museum of the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And had a great time in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
So it was a great day. So, yeah, it depends. Every year's different.
Now, as you come up toward the end of the year, and you come up to December 25th, and you write, "Joy to the world."
Joy to the world. You know, Christmas to me, like I said before, used to be presents and Christmas and Santa Claus and the Sears catalog and everything, you know, getting all the presents you can. And now it is about the birth of Jesus. I'm so enthralled because of the birth of Jesus.
Thank you for being with us. This is a great book. You really got to go and get it. Buy it for other people. I'm Tony Carnes with Lauren Green. Thank you for joining us at a journey through NYC Religions Television.